Hello ជម្រាបសួរប្រជាជនធេរានុក្រៈគ្រប់ព្រះអង្គជម្រាបសួរបងប្អូនប្រិយមិត្ត So today I will talk in English ថ្ងៃនេះគឺខ្ញុំនឹងនិយាយជាភាសាអង់គ្លេសដោយយើងមានវាគ្មិនពិសេសគឺដូច្នេះវាគ្មិនពិសេសរបស់យើងនិយាយជាភាសាអង់គ្លេស So today it's very great day again that the CEROC come to meet everybody on the talk show our 29th years anniversary of the Paris Peace Agreement. We will have a series of talk show, and today is October 21st, 2020. Our talk show today is we'll be having a special guest. I will introduce special guest today. Here you go. Carmel Tanaka. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? So fun.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. The weather today a little bit chilly, right?
Yes, it's definitely cold out there, but there was sunshine, which was very
nice. Yeah, okay. So Carmel Tanaka, Carmel Tanaka is from Genocide or Prevention BC, and see how many hats according to her brief bio. But I will not introduce her. I will ask her to introduce herself. So yeah, this is microphone for you, Tanaka, Mrs. Tanaka. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sopan. And the CEROC, the Committee for Election Rights of Overseas Cambodians, for inviting me to speak today. Thank you. Like Sopan said, my name is Carmel Tanaka, and a little about me personally. I am a granddaughter of Holocaust survivors on my mother's side, and I am a granddaughter of intern Japanese Canadians on my father's side. And I was born in Vancouver, BC, Canada, on the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. And I give this land acknowledgement to recognize the current genocide of the Indigenous peoples, the stewards of this land that I get to call home. I am a community engagement professional. What does that mean? That means most of the projects that I do, I am bringing people together from different communities so we can understand each other better and create something beautiful. And one of these projects is Genocide Prevention BC. I'm now going to share a little bit of history of how did that all get started. So I don't know if you know this, but in Canada, the month of April is designated as Canada's Genocide Remembrance, Condemnation, and Prevention Month. That's a very long title, but that's what it is. And so in April 2018, Genocide Prevention BC, which back then was formerly known as Genocide Prevention Think Tank, we first met. And now we are a cross-cultural collective of BC representatives committed to the prevention of genocide and crimes against humanity through dialogue, education, and broader community engagement. And we do this in support of genocide prevention in the BC school system, specifically education, and through intergenerational trauma advocacy. Now, we challenge racism and hatred by collaborating together. Many of these communities are collaborating for the first time together. And we're also an expanding group currently, but not limited to. We have Indigenous, Jewish, Armenian, Ukrainian, Rwandan, Romani, Uyghur, Rohingya, Japanese Canadian, Black, Bosnian Muslim, Baha'i, Sikh, and of course the Khmer community. We also have members from elementary, secondary, and post-secondary professors in both public and private spheres who choose to teach about genocides. And so it's a very active group. It's wonderful to have this group be together. And how it started for the first year, I had this grand plan of us being able to put an event together. But first we needed to know one another. We needed to build trust with one another. We needed to basically attend each of our events. So that's what we did. We ended up for a full calendar year attending our commemorations, many of which are internal to most communities. So it was a real honor to be able to be invited into these places of worship and homes and venues that are very sacred to communities in order to stand in solidarity. And we had roughly 30 events in 1 year. And I will let Sopan play the video so you can get a sense of what it looked like. Here's some highlights.
Sure, yeah, thank you. I will play the video right now for you. Here we go. Thank you.
Thank you for playing that, Sopan. Looking back at the video, it makes me a little emotional because it was for the first time for many of these communities that people from another community were showing up to stand in solidarity and to listen to them. And it gave us a sense that we're not alone, and that there are other communities who understand what we have gone through. And yes, the details and the specifics of the traumas and the genocides that our communities have gone through differ. It's from different region to different region, but there's a sense of camaraderie and understanding and this mutual respect. So we say that never again is never again, but it keeps happening, and this is why we're here today. So
great.
Back to you, Sopan.
Yeah, great, thank you. I think Carmel have very great background because she have mother from Jewish family and father from Japanese Canadian family, right? So she is happy to call herself Jewish Japanese.
Japanese.
Japanese. Okay. Well, wow, very good. Yeah. Regarding to the CEROC, the committees for election rights of overseas Cambodians. So we have been working to promote human rights through election participation. So we want all Cambodian overseas to participate in elections in Cambodia, in all national elections. Like you know, the history of Cambodia started by the intervention of the United Nations in 1993. That is the first election that organized by United Nations, that after the Paris Peace Agreement was signed by 18 countries on October 23rd, 1991. And I think we can connect to the history before that is during 1975 to 1979, when the Khmer Rouge came to power. So during these 3 years, 8 months, and 23 days, the Cambodian population, around 3 million, were killed. So some academics call it killing field, but some call it genocidal regime. So whatever the name to be called or it categorized by the professional, but the reality is that Cambodian people, almost 3 million, were killed by direct killing, by starvation, by sickness, and by other causes during this period. So when we're talking about the Khmer Rouge period, Cambodian people worldwide are still haunted by this period. And some of them, not some of them, most of them, they are having PTSD, post-traumatic disorder syndrome, or we can call it trauma. So it is a scar that Cambodian people still have in memory. And during this period, it is the Cold War that during the Vietnamese War in southern Vietnam, there were competition between US and China during that time. So when China backed Pol Pot came to power, Cambodian people were killed and suffering was happening. Right now, the situation is really worrisome for Cambodian people around the world. That's why Paris Peace Agreement is very important. And tomorrow there will be a worldwide demonstration against the presence of China in Cambodia again, because they're afraid the history will repeat itself. After the 2018 national election, after the Hun Sen party dissolved Cambodia National Rescue Party, they call CNRP, which is the only vibrant opposition party in Cambodia that which have reserved 55 seats in the parliament. But Hun Sen used his power totally, absolutely to dissolve this party. And he organized election in 2018. So right now, only his party won all the seats in the parliament. That's why he became a single party state in Cambodia, and China came back again to patron this party. So we really afraid that the killing field might happen again, but we pray that it will not be happen again, but we don't want history to repeat itself, because the scars and memory and trauma are still insisting in all Cambodian people memories. However, this is just a brief history about what we are going to discuss in detail, and Carmel Tanaka will help us to set some insights about genocide, because that is her field. So I have the first question for you, Ms. Tanaka. What the world has learned about genocide and or killing field, its causes and its long-term prevention?
Thank you very much for that introduction. I feel that's really important to know, and many of that I'm learning for the first time. I'm not very familiar with Cambodia. I haven't been there. I also haven't even been to Asia yet, so I appreciate that. Great question. I might have a bit of a pessimistic answer to that. I don't think the world has learned very much from genocide. If anything, it's learned how to do it even better each and every time. From my own family history, as well as the members in the group, and from what they have shared with me, you see today that genocide is currently happening. I can list 3 right now. I've already listed 1, the indigenous genocide here in Canada. There's the Uyghur genocide in China. There's also the Rohingya genocide in Myanmar. And these are just 3 that are currently happening right now that we are aware of. As for the causes, there are many. And I wish I was a political scientist who can list off and rattle smartly all the different reasons. I'm also not an academic when it comes to genocide. I am a member of 2 communities that have gone through genocide, and I'm also a community engagement professional that brings together communities that identify as having gone through genocide. And so what I can tell you from my own personal point of view is that it's greed and the want for power of resources that is the root cause of genocide. And listen, genocides don't happen overnight. It's not, regimes don't wake up and decide that they're going to persecute a group. This happens over decades, centuries even. And there's usually a long history of persecution and othering of a group before you get to the point of exterminating them. In regards to long-term prevention, already hearing what I just said is, you know, we're probably going to see genocide happen again, and that's more likely than not. However, the aim would be to mitigate and to try and prevent genocides from happening in future. And I believe, as do members of Genocide Prevention BC, believe that education, proper education, is the key to long-term prevention. And that goes across every community. every country, and education will look different from community to community. Not every region has the ability, the resources, and most importantly, the freedom to be able to offer the type of education that is needed to be able to educate young people so that they can recognize early signs of hatred, racism, and classism, and be able to stand up and be able to have the freedom to stand up without being punished or killed themselves in order to do something before this all leads to genocide. Here in BC, I feel that education can start as early as elementary school, of course, age-appropriate material. But here's the truth. You can graduate high school here in BC, British Columbia, and enter university or just graduate high school and not know very much about World War II and that there was the Holocaust. In fact, and there's statistics that are right now out there that indicate that most people don't even think the Holocaust happened. So this is very troubling. There is some positive that's happening. Genocide Studies 12 is a new course that was just implemented last year in the BC school curriculum, and now we have the opportunity to collaborate and be resources for the teachers who are choosing to teach Genocide Studies 12. There are many innovative ways of offering education. And one example that I'd really like to share with you is a very cool mobile bus that was converted into a classroom by the Ukrainian Canadian community. And it has state-of-the-art graphics where on one side of the bus, it's these beautiful panels and digital screens, and then there's seats for students to go into. Of course, this is in a pre-COVID world. And there's tablets that the students can use to interact with questions and activities that are happening on the screen. When you pair that together with very good facilitators, in fact, some of the best facilitators I've seen out there, it was a really great way to keep students interested, because I've seen education on Holocaust and other genocides before, and you need to keep it engaging enough in order for young people to stay engaged and interested. I wanted to talk about definition of genocide very quickly because you raised that, Sopan, and it is a sticky topic for everyone, I think.
We don't yeah, that's true. But go ahead, yeah, I like to hear that. And I think the audience want to hear the definition of genocide, because there is a different definition or sometimes misunderstanding about what is the difference between genocide and killing field, you know? Because in Cambodia, right. Like myself, I have a political science background. I spent my 2 years for my master's degree at University of Hawaii. So there is a debate about the difference between genocide and killing field. So for me, I think that's still an ongoing debate on that. Yeah, I like to hear from you. Go ahead, yeah.
And it will continue to be an ongoing debate, Sopan. Communities not only have a different idea of what genocide means to them, many identify as having gone through genocide, but is not officially recognized by the country they live in or by the very country that persecuted against them. Also, internationally, there's the Geneva Convention definition, and not every country has adopted every single article that is part of that definition. There's many reasons for that. But everyone can just as easily go online to look at that definition. But here, what I'd like to say is I'm not here to compare your genocide to another genocide. I'm not here to compare your pain and your trauma to someone else's. I'm not here to talk about the mass body count of how many bodies. What it is at the end of the day is a terrible, terrible trauma that your community has faced. And it is one that we need to stand together to understand better so that it doesn't happen again. And that is an approach that Genocide Prevention BC takes. And it has been one that is sticky and something that we've addressed and talk about over and over and over again. We recognize that we have differences in opinion. And I'll give you an example. Not everyone thinks that Japanese Canadian internment is genocide. However, if you dig deeper, there is such a thing as cultural genocide. And when you have a loss of language, of culture, and 98% intermarriage rate post-internment to effectively assimilate, it makes you wonder what happened to the Japanese Canadians. True, we were not killed, but we were erased, and there were effective measures to erase us. So there is that, for example, and I can say that from my own personal experience there. Now, there's also the stages of recognizing genocide, the lead up towards extermination. I've seen that there's 10 stages, there's also 8 stages. To me, you can look these up as well, but I don't care what the number of stages are. By the time you get to persecuting and exterminating, it's too late. That ship, it's a machine that will continue to do what it was meant to do because no one stopped it early enough. And I think that's something that we need to make sure that we are aware of. Is we need to focus on what we can do here. As I don't know who's tuning in here from BC, but wherever you are in the world, this is where we need to be focusing our attention, is what we can do where we currently are. And education is the key to that. And one of the ways we can do that is as community members share our stories. I have been waiting for a very long time to be able to connect with you, especially Sopan. Like I said before, I don't know much about what happened in Cambodia in the 70s, and I would be honored to hear witness accounts to understand better what happened and to also share what happened in my family. And this is a way for us to build a relationship and to build trust and to be able to help one another and understand what the current situations are today. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there. Yeah. Sure, oh, wait, hold on. There's a third part to that question. It's, I think, more long-term prevention. Well, listen, I'm going to offer a little example that I find quite interesting.
Can we go back to long-term prevention?
Of course.
Elaborating about a little bit. I think you focus on education. That is surprising because it's very good that we can glue people, especially younger generation, to know more about genocide or killing field, because when they know the suffering, they know the cause of suffering. And when they know the cause of suffering, they know the suffering can be ended. And after that, they must know the path that leading to the end of suffering. So I think this is the 4 elements of problem conflict resolution, or maybe called suffering resolution. Genocide, according to what I understand from you and according to what I learned, it means to eliminate one race by another race. It is some definition from other scholars, but it depends on what scholar you read and what scholar they have the argument about. And like in case of Cambodia, when I talked with my professor, he said that it should not be called genocide because this is not another race try to eliminate another race or wipe out another race. It is about the internal conflict. It is different faction that they fight for power. They fight for power from internal factor and also power from external factor. Because in case of Cambodia, like you said that you want to hear some experience from myself. For me, I don't have intact experience with the killing field because I was born after the killing field. But I heard a lot from my parents, from my neighbors, from my sisters and brother. And I have many of my siblings were killed during the Khmer Rule because I am the youngest in the family. Although I don't have intact with the killing field, but there were scars everywhere. What I mean scar is that people are mentally disabled. And also everywhere when I travel throughout the country in Cambodia, my childhood is experiencing skeleton and bone that were disorganized in the rice paddy, on the pond, inside the river, in the pagoda, the Buddhist temple, and sometimes on the street. So this may be unbelievable, but right now all those bones has been well organized in one place, and biggest place that you can see the skeleton in Phnom Penh. They call Genocide. If you visit Cambodia, you will visit Tuolslang Museum to experience the killing field. Because Cambodia has been known to the world by two things. One is Angkor Wat, the great wonder of the world, was built by the Khmer ancestors for this great civilization on this region. Another thing that the world is known about Cambodia is the killing fields. Yeah. So when they visit Phnom Penh, they will go to Tuolslang prison that the Khmer turned this primary school into a prison, a prison for children, for women, and for men that they accuse as CIA agent or they accuse as enemy to the Angkar. The Angkar means the central power of the Communist Party. And it took those people to kill in Genocide. It's about 8 kilometers from Tuolslang. So the visitor will be shocked when they arrive at Genocide because there's a lot of bone and skeleton spread around there. So this is the bad experience. But after that, they released experience by visiting Angkor Wat. However, what I mean here is it might be hard to define that this is genocide, because according to the Vietnamese because 1979 Cambodia was known by Vietnamese invasion, and some others they argue that Vietnam come to liberate Cambodia from the Khmer, but actually for myself, I grew up during the Vietnamese prison. Actually, when Vietnam came to Cambodia, Cambodia is still having war and people still die, and the mines still bury under the ground, and people still be amputated by the mine, So it seemed like Vietnam didn't liberate Cambodia from the Khmer. Actually, Cambodia was survived by the Paris Peace Agreement of 23rd October 1991 that led to the first national election in 1993 that we celebrate tomorrow for the 29th years anniversary. So, but according to the government and some other powerful holder in Cambodia, they praise more day of the Vietnamese liberation from the Khmer. But for the free mind people and democratic people, they will praise for the 1991 Paris Peace Agreement because they ceased the fire, they ceased fighting, and they ceased the foreign occupation over Cambodia, especially Vietnamese occupation that had to withdraw all their militaries from Cambodia in 1990 or 1989, during that year, and organize an election. Although right now, the communists, Vietnamese communists and Chinese communists come to Cambodia again, that make Cambodian people and the world afraid that such killing field and brutalities leadership will come back again. So from my experience, it is not about 29 years, or it is about almost 32 years after the Khmer Rule has been getting away. It is about a memory. It is about mental scar. It is a mental problem.
I'm actually very glad that you're talking about mental illness and these serious issues so openly, because for a very, very long time, this has been a taboo topic that doesn't often get addressed. And I think it's only in the last few years, maybe a couple decades, that communities are starting to talk about it more openly. Mental health issues look and express and manifest itself in many different ways. That can be addiction to drugs, alcohol, PTSD, various different forms of social isolation. We're seeing that in communities here in BC, and disassociation and identity issues. And this has a domino effect. This can affect one's ability to work in order to earn money, in order to have a roof over their head and to pay for food, especially in diasporic communities. And then there's also intergenerational trauma, descendants of survivors, and what does this trauma do as it moves and starts to affect future generations? Because we all know that genocides and crimes against humanity did not end on the day that an agreement was made or that the war ended. It continues on and has a very long-term effect. Usually results in mental illness, loss of language and culture, and this deals with identity issues. And I'm sure you have this as well, because I see this in many communities, is a reluctance of the survivors to tell their stories to their children and to their grandchildren. And you see the grandkids and the children wanting to know more, and it creates this conflict, because this is, you grow up knowing that you never ask about what happened. But there are some people who feel this need to share their stories so that their future generations can be the torchbearers, so that they can amplify their voices. And that's really important to talk about that. I wanted to talk about an interesting example that I found quite shocking, and it might be applicable to this, to the example that you shared of me that's happening in Cambodia. I spoke with my friend Giselle, who is the vice president of the Rwandan community here in Vancouver, to talk to me about Rwanda's post-genocide strategy to rebuild their community towards a better future. And what I found really interesting is that they recognized that they did not have the capacity and the resources to be able to imprison every single person who was part of the planning and the organizing of the genocide. And so they knew that they couldn't put them all into prisons, and that they couldn't use the formal judiciary system in order to have justice. And they turned to their indigenous cultural system, a community code called Gachacha. And they used that in order to devise a plan of how many X number of years in a prison someone would serve, or how many years that they would do community work. And it would be determined based on the level of their crime. And the highest crime would serve 25 years in the prison system. And we're now at year 27. So they had this whole plan in those 25 years to essentially re-educate Rwanda and the people who were in the prisons, the prisoners themselves, as well as the families of the victims, for the eventual unity and reconciliation of when these prisoners would re-enter back into the community. And this is being studied by many, many academics around the world. It's a fascinating experiment, and they're saying that it's quite successful, and it's not ideal. It's far from perfect. You're thinking this is not justice to what happened to your family. But my understanding from what I was told, that the genocide against the Tutsi, there's no ethnic difference between the Tutsi and their persecutors, and that was created in order to take their resources, because they were at one point known as the ruling class. I'm not an expert in this area. This is based on what I've been told, but I find it very interesting to hear that, because I come from the Jewish community, and I can tell you that if I were to propose to the Jewish community, Holocaust survivors, to sit in the same room as their Nazi persecutors, it's unthinkable. It's even unimaginable, but it's currently happening. And maybe we can take a page from the book. And what I find interesting is they turned to their indigenous and cultural practice for guidance. And I think we can draw from teachings and the knowledge of our people, our ancestors, to be able to help us heal and move on together with this. So I pose this back to the Khmer community to see if there's something within your community that can help. You might already be doing that. But yeah, I wanted to share that.
But yeah, thank you. Okay, just post it. Okay, it seems like we already elaborated on definition, causes, and long-term prevention, right? Or you want to add
No,
more?
I feel like we're good with question number 1.
Okay, good. So right now we go question number 2. It's a little bit tricky question because it's relating to geopolitics as well, but I hope you can try to to tell the audience as much as you could. Should human rights help prevent killing fear? And what will happen to Cambodia again when China has deeply re-engaged this country at the present?
Of course, human rights and the structures that are set in place should protect human rights. There's the International Law Court, for instance, should prevent genocide as well as crimes against humanity. But we're seeing that history is repeating itself. Where is the human rights structures and where is the international outcry of the current genocides that are happening right now? I hear nothing. So it just shows you that we can have human rights, but whether or not they're being held is another question. And the sad truth is that there's money and resources in genocide and war, especially for the winning side. And it's a dark industry that makes the world go round, and I don't see it ending anytime soon. What I do see is grassroots movements like Genocide Prevention BC that's bringing many communities together, that builds trust and builds bridges between our silos and standing together, helping to educate. And I feel like that's where we're going to make a difference, is by helping the communities that we have an influence over. Canada by no means is innocent of genocide, but I'm hoping that through its path of reconciliation and decolonization, my hope is that Canada can be a leading country, especially in the international arena, to denounce current and future genocides and any actions that nations are taking that look obviously like they're following that dark path towards genocide. I know that there's change happening in the last 2 or 3 years that I've been a part of this Genocide Prevention BC group. There were only, when I started, 5 genocides that were officially recognized by Canada. And I thought to myself, this is so bizarre. How are there only 5 when I know that there are more than 5? And in the last 2-3 years, 2 more have been officially recognized. I believe that's the Rohingya as well as the Romani, which shows me it's not the path of and the pace of change that I would like it to be. I'd like it to be much faster, but however slow it means that it's happening. It's also very political to get things recognized, and it's slow, but change is happening. As for China and the current state of present day Cambodia, as I said before, I'm not a political scientist. I wish I knew more about the area. But as a community engagement professional, I'm more in touch with the diaspora communities, and I think that's also something that's worth noting here. Is we're talking about a country that's in Asia, but we're also as the diaspora community talking about it. And I completely understand your fear. A lot of our communities are living in fear that persecution will be reignited. It's part of our trauma that we are on guard, waiting for something to happen again. That's not unique to your community. Unfortunately, that's happening today, and you're seeing a lot of issues happening. One example is in Armenia. Currently, Armenia had genocide, and today they're at war with Azerbaijan, and they're backed by a country, Turkey, that is their persecutor from the Armenian genocide. And so you start to see present day politics almost repeating itself from what happened, say, over 100 years ago. And so there is a lot of fear, and I understand that is an issue. But I find that it's really hard to make changes from overseas. It's easier to make changes from closer. First steps is what we just did today, Sopan, which is, for me, for the first time, educating someone like me who is involved in this area to know more about what happened back in the 70s, so that I better understand what the fear is today. And listen, China it's not innocent right now. Currently, there's genocide of the Uyghur community in China, and so I would be very wary of the country, to be perfectly honest.
So there will be both impacts, individual impact and systemic impact. What I mean by individual impact is when some people has been raised through a violent family, they are tended to be very violent, especially domestic violence. Domestic violence is the hidden cause of violence that can lead to genocide, can lead to killing fear. That I think that is individual tendency that education can help them. Education from family, parenting, and education through community, like what you have been doing, and also education at school. That is public education, and also the media. The media play important part to educate about people not to be rigid by violence or cannot control, cannot cope themselves when bad temper happen, right? So this is individual problem, individual impact, what I mean. But according to such systemic impact, I can see that the administrative system, or we call governance system, or we can call political regime, like democratic regime, they respect human rights. They value human being, like every human being. We were born equally. We have the same rights: the right to speak, the right to sing, the right to assembly, and also the right to express criticism and peaceful protest, etc. But in a communist regime like China or North Korea, or Vietnam or Cuba or Venezuela right now, those countries seem like they don't value human rights. They seem like value more economic development or more central power for themselves, more than human rights. So the disrespect of human rights, that somehow it can lead to killing fear or genocide. This is how the prospective products or human being or human behavior can produce such long-term, short-term or long-term killing fear or genocide. So in this prospect, I think a human right is fundamental need for ending or to prevent the genocide or killing fear. And also education like curriculum. We have to put this knowledge, genocide or prevention knowledge into curriculum. I agree with you absolutely, but not only in democratic country like Canada or US, but it must be also in communist country like in China. And China had to reform the country to abide by international law, to respect human rights, because the United Nations, which is the world organization, the platform for every country to debate and to discuss about progressive or humanity, they should adopt human rights in their constitution and human rights in their study curriculum. So I think this is part of the systemic impact and individual impact. True, like myself, I like to practice meditation, the Vipassana meditation. That is what I have learned since the last 20 years. And right now I still teach my kids, I still practice myself. How you calm down your temper, how you calm down your frustration. And when it comes to stress and come to depression, it is uncontrollable. You know how to breathe in, breathe out. You have to concentrate on your breathe in and breathe out. This is how we control ourselves. But according to current situation, or if we talk with the business people, they don't believe in that, because they say that stresses is good to advance their business. And stresses are sometimes very good to fight for something that we want. if we keep calm, we are not stressful, we cannot achieve what we strive for, right? So depend on situation. So everything is conditional. Like myself, I believe in pacifism. I am a like pacific person, because when you want to spread peace to someone else, we have to accumulate peace inside our heart first. So if we don't have peace inside our heart, how can we spread peace to other people, right? So this is the big debate, and I think it become very practical to do that. According to what you said, can you add more about human rights and genocide? Or it must go together? You think so, or you think that just put genocide in curriculum is enough? But I think in school here they have human rights in like social study. Like I have my kids study at grade 5, and I read her book about social study. They have some part that talk about human being, about taking care of our health, like physical health and mental health too, and also respect neighbors, something like that. So I think this is very good curriculum. I want this curriculum to be in Cambodia as well, because according to my experience, when I learned at primary school and secondary school in Cambodia, the curriculum is really outdated. So when it's outdated, it means that they don't get to what the world is changing. The world's moving fast toward, but some curriculum are still stacking behind. So we don't want our kids to stay stacking behind. We want them to go forward with the world changing, right? And education, I think not only about public education at school, but it is about parenting. Because parents, like mother and father, they have to be ready when they want to have kids. They have to be ready to be a parent, right? To be a parents, something like that. Not parents, parent with S, yeah, parents. So this is very important, I think, very important prevention. And we go back to prevention. No, we're talking about human rights and genocide.
I think they're all connected, Sopan, and I can definitely answer to what you're saying. Yeah. I think we need to be approaching this in a multi-pronged approach. It's not just what we can do as individuals, but what we can do as communities and what we can do as regions, as countries, and on an international level. And when you're saying that you want the level of education that we're getting here in Canada to also be back home in Cambodia, I hear you on that, but that's not always possible. So perhaps there's a role that the Cambodian community in the diaspora can have in being able to help send educational information to families back home. And one of the things that the Genocide Prevention BC group would really like to do, and it's something that we have yet to do, is to collaborate with teachers in order to create an online resource. The plan is to share our stories and have it be translated in multiple languages into all of our languages so that it can be spread far and wide, and then to have a teaching module accompany our stories and have it be a quarterly, so 4 issues a year, I should say, that shares not only stories from one community, but many, and to follow the calendar year, because I can tell you, after I did 1 year of attending everyone's events, it's a full year, and it actually got quite difficult emotionally for me to attend all of these events, because there's one literally every other week. Yes, education from within the home is very important, and one of those ways is to know about other communities. I really feel like you have strength in numbers. If you're just trying to advocate and you're one person, it's harder to do that unless you are a community. And if then you're communities, then you have power and the power of influence to do good. You have just as much ability to do bad as you can do good. And I would like for there to be an opportunity for, of course, your voices to be amplified, to be able to share. And something that I've also been noticing when it comes to not just education, but you can also have political power. You can be a lobbyist. You can advocate for policy changes. And don't get me wrong, you can do a lot from here. It's a matter of having enough support. And you gain support by building bridges with more people and having a stronger network.
Yeah. In terms of individual approach, I think that's what we should do. In terms of systemic approach, like geopolitics, geopolitics play important part in creating genocide. So in case of Rwanda, in case of Cambodia, the study show that there is interconnectedness between geopolitics, between superpower. They use that small countries as a pawn for their political outreach and for their supremacy. So this is systemic approach. But either way, for me, I think start from individual is very important because in terms of theory of original interdependence, individual are the first factor to get started. So the systemic created by individual. When the individual have right understanding and right thinking and respect of human rights, value of life or order, they will not kill. They will not produce more weapons to kill, right? And they will not play the politics that kill people. So like political scientists like Thomas Hobbes, he said that human being animal by nature. So this is very hard when we say that. But Hobbes, he have his own definition that when individual has well equipped by education, by morality, and by shame or bad conduct, it have to escape human being from animal being. So, but the world right now, like we see, even though we started from the enlightened era, like before people kill each other, especially conflict among ethnic group, conflict among religious followers. We see the history of Christian, Protestant, and Catholic fights against each other, and Christian fight against Muslim, Muslim fight against Christian, Hindu, or some other cases like Myanmar right now. Some extreme Buddhists, they try to commit violence against Rohingya Muslim, something like that. But all this is started from dogma, from the deep thought of human being when they are tied to something strongly with misunderstanding, they can commit anything. Like recently we heard about a student, a secondary student beheaded a teacher in France. Mm-hmm. So it is really bad, and because when he kills his teacher, a history teacher, his name is Samuel, and he prayed to Allah that Allah will be happy by his action. So all this misbehavior is caused by religious belief, dogma that is strong attached to those children. Sorry, my kid tried to come and talk too.
Hello. Hi, what's your name?
Alita.
Oh, lovely to meet you. I'm Carmel.
Hello.
Hi.
So we line now. There's a lot of people watching. You want to say something about school or what?
No, I want to sing. Bye-bye.
Oh, okay. Bye-bye. Thank you. Sorry. Sorry, Carmel. Sorry, audience. Yeah.
Well, that's the future right there, is children who will hopefully have the education that they need in order to identify when something is right and when something isn't, and have the tools in order to stand up and not be complacent when they see racism and hatred happening. And I think that will eventually, these young people will grow up and they will become are world leaders. And I'm hoping that it'll start small, but the ripple effect will be that they will think twice when they are in positions of leadership.
You know, I'm happy to see the school start by identify bully. So they learn about school bully, you know. So when they learn about bully, they don't bully themselves. This is how the knowledge help people. So when they know that these people are bullying these people, they themselves learn how to prohibit, I mean, themselves from committing bullying. So this is a good approach, starting by stop bullying in school, bullying in public, and also bullying in home between their siblings, right? I think this is all good for the children. I think right now we have a few minutes more, maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So we have, I think we already answered the 2 questions. And I look at the audience, they like watching, they like giving appreciation and also giving us heart. But they don't have any comment or
I'm happy to answer any questions that people tuning in may have.
Yeah. Okay, Navi, great talk show. Thank you so much. Do you have a question, Navi? You can have question for Miss Tanaka. Okay, at the end, what your word to the audience today, Tanaka?
Well, that I'm just very thankful and honored to be invited to speak with you and to learn more about your community, and for you in turn to also know more about me and Genocide Prevention BC. This is going to be the beginning of, I believe, a beautiful relationship and partnership between our communities. And I hope you also can see that you're not alone and that together we will make a better future together.
Yeah, that is a good perspective for the future. We can incorporate to work together. Like, I think the CEROC mission statement also helping with human rights, that people can participate in politics without, my apology, my kid like to play with me when I talk on the phone or I show live because my door is unlocked. Yeah, sorry about that.
No, not at all. I think that's great.
Hello there.
Okay.
What would you like to be when you grow up?
Yeah. Oh, a doctor.
A doctor. Wonderful. Well, we definitely need doctors, and you will be a wonderful doctor, I'm sure.
A doctor, yeah. I like to call her because she like to massage and she like to take care of me.
It's me
and take care of everybody.
It's police who's the doctor.
So yeah, you can be, but you have to study hard right now if you want to be a doctor.
Medical school. And if you want to make a business, you have to
So
go
your
to
face,
business
and
school.
another doctor.
And then,
Okay.
and then if you, I don't want to be a
Say hi to Carmel. Malika.
My older sister is shy.
Oh,
Hello.
okay.
Very sweet. Well, thank you very much, Sopan. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much. Sorry that they come to me and they want me to play with them.
That's okay. Well, I learned a word, a new word today, and that is to say thank you. So, akun.
Akun, yeah, akun chiran, yeah. Thank you so much, and I hope we can have another chance to come together again in the future, and we can work together because I think we are not far away from each other.
No, not far, and now we're on the internet. So
thank you very much. Thank you, and stay safe
during
this pandemic. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye bye.